Okay, we have our new nursery person. We have Kelsey is here new. We have Geneva new in the office doing these kind of things. We have a new microphone for me. There's a lot new going on here. And there's a lot of learning curves with that, but there's a lot old going on here. So this is an old story, long, long ago. Kristen, did you have an older or younger brother or sister?
Older.
Older? Were they a jerk?
At times.
At times, yes. I bet we can all amen to that if we had one. That line that Cain says there, "Am I my brother's keeper?" Every time I hear that, I hear it in Napoleon Dynamite's voice. Gosh, am I my brother's keeper? I don't want to be. So you may have heard this story 20 times, and you hear it in your own way. Your last church may have preached on this story a bunch. I don't know, some of you have taken an in-depth study on Genesis, and you know that this story has all these puns in it. There's tons of puns that really can't be put into English. Like if my name Hansen was in this story, then you would translate it, Hansen put his hands on somebody, and you just get that there's like a thing there. And in Hebrew, that's happening all through this. It's almost like it's easier for children to learn this story somehow. So you may not be really familiar with this story, or this may be the only time you're in church every year, and you know who Cain and Abel are, but the Bible is full of silly stories, and it seems really violent, and why in the world would we read that when there's children in the room? I don't know if some of you may have sibling rivalries where they were a jerk more than some of the time, and this story just kind of brings that up a little bit, and you feel like, oh yeah, I remember wanting to just strangle them a little bit. Some of you may, you heard that when Cain was just feeling so alone and separate from God, and you could relate to just feeling this just heart-wrenching aloneness, that God doesn't even appreciate you. I never know what backgrounds you bring into this space. There's 100 seats in here, and it's 100 different backgrounds and 100 different senses on what the Bible is and what God is and how those all interact. Part of the fun of my job is to take this grand story of spirituality and try, through one tiny, often weird story, try to reach this shared humanity that we all have. And here's how we're not going to do that today. Here's how this story does not hold us together. How it usually gets described in churches. If you've heard this story, there's a chance that you've heard the standard interpretation of Cain and Abel. And whether you meant to or not, many of you, when you heard Kristen read it, your minds went right to this place. And others of you, you'll see that. And hopefully when I'm done, we're going to take that standard interpretation and kind of turn that upside down when we find out what the story really means and what it really means for our lives. That's the goal today. And wherever you are, wherever you come from, we're going to find a way home for the Spirit to lead us there. So one, what are the highlights that people tend to hear in the story? This is it. Cain is the older brother with all the rights and the responsibilities that come with being an older brother. Abel's the younger brother, and they can get away with so much. The first one, I hear, I don't have any kids, but I hear that the first one, you read all the books, you baby-proof your home, you have so much anxiety, you set all these rules, it's too much rules, it's too few rules. The second one, okay, they want to jump off the roof? Let them. It's fine, they'll learn. All right? So according to the standard bad interpretation, Cain is kind of coddled, kind of a mama's boy, and Abel is wild. Cain is domestic with his garden, and Abel is tough with his farm. Cain, in the story, is a vegetarian, which, Cheryl, that means weakling, right? Right? That's no. Standard interpretation. But Cain is almost in here, he's weak. He can't control his emotion. He's just falling down. That's not very manly. That's irresponsible. So Cain is presented as almost effeminate compared to this meaty, powerful, responsible Abel. And if God has more regard for the masculine, then God must care more about men. Men. That's the standard interpretation as a through line here And this happens all through Genesis. Pick page 2 here with Adam needed a friendly helper. So, got a little Eve on the side here. Actually, the word in there, to turn that one upside down, the word that the King James translates helpmeet, that word comes from the military, and it's the person who picks up a wounded soldier. So the real feeling there is that the wife is the one who picks up the wounded man. That is not a sense of little old woman. Or take page 3 of the Bible. Who picked the apple? I mean, they say Eve, they blame Eve, but nowhere in there does Eve take that responsibility. But so many, once you start from a perspective of being a hyper-masculine kind of patriarch, you end up twisting the story however you want. And you can twist Cain and Abel in the same way to mean power matters. God appreciates strength. Be ready to defend yourself at all times. Others are always out to get us, like a witch hunt. So we should do anything we can to stay on top, including, if that means lying or violence or cheating or cruelty. And if that worldview sounds just too close to home today, rather than 2,700 years ago, well, that's the shared common human experience we all face. The standard interpretation comes from a deplorable worldview, but we get to move forward. So, forward. Point number 2. If we go back to the section, let's see, Tom, let's go back to that part of the Bible that is italicized. Now, in ancient Hebrew, they don't have italics. We can do that wherever we want, and I just went ahead and italicized a couple words. Maybe I didn't italicize them. I don't know. Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's in. I can't read upside down. It's really hard to read that from up here. God is not prioritizing masculinity in Abel. God is not dismissing any weakness in Cain. God is responding to when Abel brings the best portion. Is that in there? No, it's okay. You can read it on your own. It doesn't matter what translation you got. When Abel brings the best, the first fruits, and Cain brings some. And in Hebrew, you know what the word some really means? Like deep meaning? Some. It just means some. It means those just the little bits over there. Just some of that. Now, you can imagine, imagine it's my anniversary is on Tuesday, right? Now, I'm going to prioritize my time. I'm going to prioritize, I guess I should go get a gift. It's about time, guys, right? But if I just brought like some of my care to my wife, that's not much. But if I make it my first priority, that matters. And it matters that I show that. And that's the difference in their offering. It has nothing to do with who gives more or what God cares about or who's tougher. It's a story about giving your best or giving your some. Religiously, we should save this story for stewardship season so we can talk about giving your best rather than your some. But stewardship, that's way away. We're not going to ask you for money. Give your best. The Olympics are great. Think of all the coaches who are saying, give your best. So it's inspirational. But just thinking about this place from a shared human experience of your everyday life, of everything you face, and all the people around you, out of any special domain, this story is about. It's about sincerity and hopefulness rather than fear and scarcity. It's about living with intentionality versus just winging it. It's about a message of resilience over anxiety. It's a message about how easy it is, how often we do, skip integrity, we internalize shame, we project that anger onto the world, and far too often we make terrible decisions that we can't unmake, that hurt others and hurt ourselves. So we're going to take it from another angle. That's the so-called standard interpretation, is so fixated on God's punishment, but that's not it either. It makes sense when we get fixated on punishment because we're those kind of people. But when you read that scripture up there, probably in another screen or two from there, God's response is full of grace. It's a serious grace. It's not just a flippant acceptance of like Cain, okay, Cain, you did what you did, let's just move on. No. God is meeting Cain at Cain's soul rather than at his worst action. God does not say, why did you do that? And some parents, when your first reaction is, why did you do that? You feel ashamed. Oh, that wasn't the best first action. No, God says foremost, why are you angry, Cain? What is it in you that makes you angry? God does not say, you are so in trouble, but rather God says, there is a better path and I believe in you. I think you can do better. God does not say, you are such a failure, but rather, it is not your fault that there is a monster crouching at the door, but it is your responsibility to not let that control you. And you can summarize that, like this is really a very Presbyterian way to see grace and sin in the world. It's not your fault that it is your responsibility. It's not your fault that everything is your responsibility. And then later God says, not as a punishment, but within consequences, God says, even though you make terrible mistakes, I will not abandon you. I will protect you even from that cycle of shame and violence that you show you're susceptible to. And that is serious grace. But what does Cain do with his grace? He runs away, as so many of us do. Sometimes we run away by staying absolutely still and doing nothing. Sometimes we run away from God by drowning out God's loving voice with our own fear and self-loathing. And yet the second part of this story is this. One that aligns your life choices with number one, aligning your life choices with your deepest values. Number two, when you don't live up to that, there's always a way home. That's what grace is. There's always a way home. There's always a way back. And God created a world from page 1 to page 4 until today, a world in which there is always a way back to the heart of the issue. And that does not mean there's a way to fix your mistakes, always. You can't undo everything you do. Rarely is there a way out of your consequences. There's often not a way to just fix the things we broke, but there's always a way back to face up to the soul in distress that got you into the mess in the first place. For Cain, he is protected, which is a story word for you can always come back. There's always room to come back through the door. He's always welcome to ask forgiveness, to try to atone, to redeem himself. He's always welcome to come back to a place where he can offer his first fruits rather than some, his deepest soul rather than just a surface effort. He's always welcome to live in a deeper peace. And for us, there's always a way back to get to the bottom of what really causes that pain in us. Why am I self-centered? And what can I do about that? Why am I scared, even of success? And how can I overcome that? Why have I pushed so many people away when I'm so lonely? And how can I change that? Why do I need to be in charge? And how can I let go of that? Why do I fill in the blank? And how can I let God transform my heart? That's what this story is about. And the answer to all those questions, one answer to all those questions, is there's kind of a recipe for transformation hiding in this story, right in plain sight. It's not the whole answer. It's not every answer in every situation. But it's a universal answer, kind of a built-in map for how God brings us back. This is it. When Cain asks that rhetorical question, am I my brother's keeper? We respond, yeah, yes, you are. You are the one specially called to care for your brother and for everyone around. Yes, we are here to care for each other. We are here to care for the ones who are so close to us, the ones that fill us with anger. We are here to care for the ones who they get everything right and the ones who just need so much help. We are here to care for the vulnerable and the hurting, to care for the land that cries out. We are here not for strength and anxiety and preemptive violence. We are here for solidarity, for patience, and for peace. And whenever we feel east of Eden, that evocative phrase at the end of the story, whenever we feel so alone and kicked out and away, like God's own presence has abandoned us, I cannot promise that caring for one person will change your life, but I can promise that any part of the journey back to regain and reform your soul, any part of the journey back to being the person you were meant to be, will certainly include a commitment to caring for your neighbors. Part of every good life and every full heart is a resistance to power and greed and a commitment to care and self-giving that will bring you home. And may it be so.